Welcome to the Angling Wisdom Podcast, your go-to source for practical advice and expert insights to enhance your fishing skills. Join us as we explore the science and tactics behind catching diverse freshwater species across North America. We will have expert biologists and anglers share insights into the species we all love to catch. Get ready for the culmination of angling wisdom and fun. I'm your host, Patrick Edwards, and this is the Angling Wisdom Podcast. Welcome to another episode of Angling Wisdom. I'm your host, Patrick Edwards. I just want to say real quick, a big shout out to our new sponsor, which is TB Custom Rods, which is Trapper Bradshaw. I've got the hat on right here, and I actually have my first rod over here. I'm going to talk about it. Trapper's a great guy, and I've known him for a little while now, and he also teaches my kids archery, which is super cool. And he happens to be a fantastic rod builder. So I'm going to hold this up for those of you watching online. You can see Angling Wisdom there. TB Custom Rods. This is a 3-piece custom rod that I had him do for a pack rod. So I take this bad boy into the backcountry, and that's the topic for today's show is actually backcountry fishing. And so I wanted to show you guys this because I actually just took it up into the Wind Rivers and I caught a really, really nice grayling, actually quite a few nice grayling, and brook trout as well. And so this is part of my arsenal now, which is really great. One thing that I like about this particular one is it's 6'6". Sometimes when you use pack rods, they come a little bit short. And that's great and all, but when I'm up in the mountains, I want to get some more distance on my casting, and I like to have a little bit more leverage. And this rod definitely performs. I like that it has a nice feel to it. I could feel every bite, every little thing that happened to my lure out there. And so it's amazing the difference a custom rod just makes when you're out there fishing. And so if you're on social media, follow and check out at TB Custom Rods. Again, that's at TB Custom Rods. You can go see some of the builds he's done. It doesn't matter whether you're doing fly fishing, bait casters, spinning rods like this one. He's got everything for you. So go check out Trapper's awesome products. All right, so now that we got that out of the way, what we're going to talk about today is the top 5 things that I would suggest you take into the backcountry if you're going to go fishing for high elevation trout. This will be a little controversial for some because everybody's got some of their favorite things, but the number one thing that I would say if you're going to go up and try to catch trout, grayling, any of those kind of things is a fly. So I have a fly here with me. Flies come in all different shapes and sizes. You've got your dry flies, you've got your bead-headed flies, your emergers, your streamers, all kinds of different things. But I'll tell you what, if you want to catch lots and lots of trout and grayling, you pretty much need to have these in your arsenal because sometimes that's all they want. And so if you're a fly fisherman, you're like, yeah, it's pretty great. It's pretty easy, right? I've got a whole bunch of these in my box. They're in my kit. So you're ready to go. But, for those of you who are fishing maybe a spinning setup, it's a little bit more challenging. And there actually are ways that you can cast, and I'll have to demonstrate this on a video for you at some point, but there are ways that you can cast a fly like this pretty far with a spinning rod without using a bubble. But I did bring a bubble just so I could show you. There is a way to get a fly way out there. You can cast it way out, like say you're fishing a small lake or pond up in the mountains. You can cast a fly super far by using one of these. This is called an adjust-a-bubble. And I've been using these since I was a little kid. We used to use them for fishing high mountain stuff, but also I used them fishing for perch, bluegill, bass, those kind of things in a smaller lake close to where I live. And these things are really handy because what you do is it's an inline bobber. So essentially you run a line all the way through and then you twist this around. It's got like a rubber gasket inside. And what it does is it'll actually wrap around that line and you can set your depth. So you can see it's kind of got a twist in it now. And then just to undo it, you just pull it out and let it snap shut. But what happens is you can actually pull this end out and you can put water inside of it to make it cast even farther. So say you see fish surfacing way, way, way out there. This might be a really good way for you to put some extra weight behind your cast and actually get that fly over to where you want to be. They're also great for bait fishing as well. So that would be my number one, is the fly. If you're going to go in the backcountry, you should have a good assortment and a good arsenal of flies. All right, number two, and this has always been one of my favorites, is the spinner. So right here, I've got a Panther Martin. It's one of my favorites. This one has a gold blade with a black and yellow body. There's lots of different versions of this out there, but my top three spinners that I've had really good success with are, of course, the Panther Martin. Otherwise, I wouldn't be showing it to you. The Blue Fox Vibrax spinners are really great as well. And then Rooster tails. I used to use Rooster tails when I was younger. Caught a lot of fish on them. They're not my favorite just because they are a little bit harder to get the actual blade to spin. But as far as catching fish, I mean, spinners are one of the best things no matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter whether you're fishing for even bass. I mean, it's really good to have a spinner on hand. Spinners catch lots and lots of different kinds of fish, but in the backcountry especially, it really gets them excited. I think, a lot of those high mountain trout are pretty precipitous. So like when they see smaller fish going around, they're going to try to eat them. And so Panther Martin is always a good way to go. I like to use these in streams. I like to use them in the high mountain lakes. And one of the reasons that I really like to use Panther Martins in particular is, let's say you're fishing one of those high mountain lakes and there's a clear drop off. Like you can see it drops way off. You can actually cast it way out there because they are weighted. So this little piece right here is a weight. You can cast it super far and they sink pretty deep. And so you can actually fish any part of the water column you want. You can cast out, and as soon as it hits the top of the water, start retrieving, or you can let it sink about midway in the water column, or you can let it sink all the way down. Obviously, if you let it sink all the way to the bottom, you're risking losing that lure, but these are fantastic options if you're going to fish deep water. And even in skinny water, like if you're using some of the smaller sizes that they make, they're fantastic for the skinny water. You can fish little creeks, little streams, and have no issues. So definitely a top option. So the number two pick for me is the spinner. Number three, and right behind it, is the spoon. So I have a couple of spoons here. You'll probably recognize these. These are PK spoons. So PK spoon in this hand, Flutterfish in this hand, both made by PK Lures. Again, PK is a sponsor of this podcast, but I'll tell you what, their spoons are dynamite. They work really well for trout, especially in these high mountain lakes. You can go to pklure.com and use the code WISDOM at checkout for 20% off. I like to use the Flutterfish number one, PK spoon number two. I also like the rattle spoon. If you watch any of my videos, you've probably seen the one where I've got this massive rainbow trout out of a river on a rattle spoon and it barely fits in the net. So their spoons catch trout year round, especially through the ice, man. I love fishing them through the ice. We'll get to that when ice fishing season rolls around. But these things are amazing. You catch tons and tons of fish on them. One thing I will mention about the spinners and the spoons is that colors kind of do matter, in my opinion. Some people disagree with me, and that's okay. But the top three that I carry are, I like to have one that's a gold color, one that's a nickel, and one that's a copper. You can go with whatever colors you like, but those are the ones that I personally like to have. And one thing that I've noticed is, like with spinners in particular, I like to have a little green as an option as well. For whatever reason, the trout really like that. So kind of like a chartreuse green, not like any kind of green, but kind of a brighter green. But spoons are great too. And for pretty much the same reason as the spinner, You can cast them really far. You can fish the entire water column. One thing that you can do with these that's a little bit more unique is like if you want to snap jig them back, you can actually cast out, let it sink, rip your rod tip, let it fall, rip your rod tip, let it fall. I catch lots of walleye and trout doing that. In the backcountry, it works really well in the fall, especially for trout. So that's a really great option. The other nice thing is PK makes a lot of different sizes. So as an example, this past weekend, I was able to use this guy, this little gold one, and it's super small, and I can use it in those smaller streams. I don't have to worry about casting a spoon that's 2-3 inches long. Lots of great options, and PK definitely has some great ones. So spoons would definitely be my number 3. My number 4 would be a kind of crankbait. Now, a lot of people are going to be like, why in the heck would you use a crankbait up in the mountains? Well, again, these trout are piscivorous, so they like to eat other fish. And when you present them with something that looks injured and something that looks like something that they can gobble down and get a lot of protein, a lot of nutrition from, they're going to do it. So I have one of PK's little ridge rattlers here. These work well. Also, the number 6 X Wrap is a great option made by Rapala, and they're good for different reasons. So like this guy from PK, it'll go out there, like if you cast it out there, it's heavy, it'll go really far, and it'll sink. So you can fish that full water column. But there are times where the fish get really picky. And sometimes it's nice to be able to throw a lure out, rip it along, and let it suspend. And that's where the X-Wrap really shines, is you can cast it way out there. You can get it, work it down a couple of feet in the water column, rip, pause, and just let it sit. And some of those bigger, really predatory fish really like that. I've caught a lot of big walleye and a lot of big trout doing that. But if you can do like that rip, pause, and just kind of work with that cadence to figure out what the fish like, you'll see that they'll smash pretty good sized crankbaits, especially those suspending cranks. Dynamic also makes a really good one called a J-Spec. They work really well. I'll try to throw a picture in here of my biggest brookie ever caught on a J-Spec. So they work really, really well. Cranks up in the mountains, believe it or not, is a great way to go. I know when I was growing up, we figured it out on just a stock trout lake, throwing out just a really small plug behind the boat on some of these higher elevation prairie lakes. The trout just absolutely annihilate those things, and you can catch 100 fish in a day, and it's really, really fun. And so definitely don't disregard crankbaits. I mean, it's not in the top 2, but it is something, especially if you have a lake up in the high elevation, backcountry that are big and are predatory. So like especially like your char, I would highly, highly recommend you take something like that. If you have tiger trout, if you have splake, they're probably going to want them too. So just a suggestion, but you can try whatever you want. Last but not least, any of you that know me are going to know what I'm going to show next. So here we go. The jig, and specifically the marabou jig. People that have fished with me know that I love this particular lure. And the reason that I do is because I catch fish with it everywhere I go. It doesn't matter whether I'm in the backcountry, I'm on a reservoir, I'm on a river, doesn't matter. I catch all species. Like one minute I could catch a 10-pound carp, the next minute I could catch a 10-pound walleye on this very lure. So the marabou jig is a go-to. This is my favorite color. I do like the white. You can go with a whole lot of different colors. I found that white and chartreuse, or a combination of the two, tend to work really well. The other nice thing for anglers right now is they're inexpensive. So if you want to buy a bunch of those, you can typically buy them in bulk, buy 10, 20, 50 at a time, and it doesn't break the bank. And you can catch hundreds, thousands of fish with with those jigs, just depending on how many you lose. But they are phenomenal. And I think that one of the reasons that they are so darn effective is, like, this one's an 1/8 ounce. This is my favorite size to use on like rivers, but like up in the mountains, I'd use like a 16th. But what I like about it is, like, this marabou off the back, it looks really lifelike when you get it wet. It just kind of pulses through the water, and it has a really good natural look to it. And what's great is you can fish it along the bottom. You can fish it high in the water column, middle of the water column. You can rip it up and down. You can tip it with things. We talked about this with trout. They have a great sense of smell. So if you have some small gulp, never hurts to throw one of those on there. Certainly help your chances for sure of catching fish. But that lure is phenomenal. It is by far one of the best all-around lures ever made. All right. So now we got through that top 5. Now, how are you going to carry all this stuff? Right? So you're going into the backcountry. You want to be prepared. One thing I would recommend, again, is Kafaru packs. That's the pack of choice for me. I just went on this trip. I have my 44 mag pack, packed all my gear in with the 44 mag. It's great. It's like my buddy Seth says, it's bomb proof. It's really, really well made, and it will outlast you. That's one thing that I really like. But there's another thing that they make that I'm going to talk about here for a second, and that is this guy. So this is called the steelhead. So the steelhead is basically like a chest harness of fishing gear. And so you can see like this, my steelhead here, I've got, my pliers in here. I had bear spray in here. I'll show you guys a picture of that, but I had bear spray when I was catching my brook trout. But what's nice is you've got big pockets in here. There's a big mesh pocket inside. It's full of my gear, so I'm not going to show you everything, but it's got this big mesh pocket inside. I've got my headlamp in here. I've got a spinner kit. I've got a fly box. I've got some gulp. I've got my little clippers to clip my line. I've got split ring pliers, all kinds of stuff all inside this thing. Okay. That's the front pocket. Oh, and I have a tape measure in here. You always want to take a tape measure if you're going to be catching fish. And then in the back pocket, so this thing will actually fold all the way out, right? So in the back pocket, I've got another box. And what's nice is I can fit a pretty decent box in here. So I've got a ton of different lures. So I can carry lots and lots of gear. And it's super well made. Like you guys can see, like the stitching on this is phenomenal. The buckles are heavy duty. The straps are heavy duty. The back of it has this mesh, which is great. So your back can actually breathe when you're out there fishing, which is kind of nice, because otherwise you might get a sweaty back. It's got loops on here so you can attach different things. But this Kafaru steelhead is awesome. And I'm going to be using this all winter long, doing my river fishing for big browns and big rainbows and big cutthroat. Because it's great. You have everything right in front of you. You don't have to worry about it. It's built really solid. And yeah, it's just going to be another really great addition to my arsenal. So again, if you want to get one of these and you want to get 10% off, you can go to kafaru.net. You can use the code WISDOM at checkout and you get 10% off. So go check out the steelhead. This is like the best kept secret in fishing right now. It's a really, really great system. You can wear it again on your chest. It's really easy to carry. And I'll tell you what, it holds a ton of gear, which is phenomenal. So no matter whether you're a fly angler or using spinning gear, bait casting gear, you can put pretty much anything you need for a fish if you're going to be mobile and moving around on a river. Because I know for me, when I have my waders on, it's nice to be able to have something like that right here. Because typically waders have like a small pocket here and maybe another pocket, and it's really hard to keep your gear in there and not drop it in the river, make a mess of everything. This thing will keep it nice and solid for you. So I hope this has been informative. Again, this is like the top 5 things that I would take, but I would love to hear what you would take. So if there's something else that you like to take into the backcountry to catch your fish, drop it in the comments. We would love to hear about it. And again, thanks for listening to this episode of Angling Wisdom. I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Angling Wisdom podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please go to patreon.com/anglingwisdom to sign up for bonus content or just to show your support for the show. You can also subscribe wherever you are listening to or watching this podcast. You can follow us on the socials by searching for Angling Wisdom on Instagram or Facebook. Thanks again to PK Lures for sponsoring this show. You can go to pklure.com and use the code WISDOM to receive 20% off of your next order. And of course, you can always go to anglingwisdom.com for more fishing content. This is Patrick Edwards signing off. I hope to see you out on the water.